We are already quite familiar now with Redux, Redux Saga, the whole Redux ecosystem, and managing our local state leveraging Redux's top-level store. However, in this section, we are going to take a look at the Context API that was recently updated by the React team. Now, the Context API has actually been around for quite some time now. In fact, the Redux library actually leverages the Context API in order to do what it does. And you might have read or heard about the Context API a lot recently. So in these following lessons, we are going to take a look at what the Context API does, how to use it, but more importantly, when to use it for our application. Now, in order for us to understand the Context API, we have to revisit some of what it is that Redux was solving to also understand what the Context API is solving. So at a high level, if you remember from our prop drilling diagram, originally before we introduced Redux and we were only leveraging component state inside of our classes, or let's say we were using component state by leveraging our new useState hook, if we wanted to pass, say, something like the current user that we fetched and authenticated on our app component, we would have to pass it down through all of these components if, say, our cart component was the one that needed it. Now, of course, this is bad as a practice because these components in between don't need to actually access this current user other than for passing it in as a prop and then passing it down until it reaches this nested component. So this is bad. And that's why we created that new separate Redux store at the top level, right? At the app level, that any component was able to hook into and then pull off pieces of state. Well, the Context API does pretty much the exact same thing because it's trying to solve the exact same problem. The Context API essentially is a way for us to store different states and modify those states inside of some separate context object, which we would then be able to hook into from components at any level, which eliminates our prop drilling issue. Now, this is going to be pretty much the same kind of solution that Redux provides for us as well. The only difference is that here we're not bringing in that Redux library, or the React Redux library for that matter. We're only leveraging React in order to solve this prop drilling problem, because the Context API comes with React. And I'll show you how we'll do it. But in order for us to do this and check out the code for this, we have to go back a couple commits to a different version of our application before we included all of the sagas and all of this features that we've recently integrated in. Now, if you go to this link that I provide you in your resources, you will see that I created a new project that rolls us back a little bit to where we were before we introduced sagas and some of the other features that we have. So what I want you to do is I want you to clone this into your root folder or whatever folder you want to hold this new project. So you're going to clone that. So copy that link that you just got. Go back to your terminal. Kill your process, hitting Control-C. This will kill the old server that you had. And then cd up one folder, or you can go to any folder that you want and just run git clone and then paste in that link that we have. So once we've cloned into it, just cd into React context lesson. And make sure to run yarn so that you install all of the dependencies. Now, open up the project. So all our application is, if you remember, is when we first started moving everything into Redux. So we are still leveraging our app.js to handle linking and connecting our user auth from our Firestore authentication. So we're still using that onAuth state changed here because if you remember, we switched over to the promise style when we started using sagas. So pretty much all we're doing is we're just firing that set current user reducer action. And that's pretty much all we're doing as far as our current user is concerned, is that we are leveraging the base action reducer update system that we had before we handled any of our asynchronous events with thunks or sagas. So we're pretty much just rolled back to a version of our application before we started doing those advanced topics. Now, we also are not fetching our collections from our Firestore. We have them locally inside of our Redux folder itself, if you remember, right? Our shop data is here inside of this file, which is also perfectly fine. This is all good for the demonstration, and we'll do some asynchronous stuff with the context API anyways. So once your project has installed all of the necessary dependencies, so you've just run yarn start, and we will start up our server and start leveraging the context API. In the next lesson, we will actually figure out how to write context API. So I'll see you in that next lesson.